and welcome to What's My Tagline? I'm your host, Carol Flagg. Thanks for tuning in today. On this show, we put our microphone in front of a variety of industry experts to understand the factors influencing messaging, branding, and reputation in healthcare. You can follow the conversation on Twitter at hashtag What's My Tagline and follow me at Carol Flagg. Very excited about today's show. My guest today is Linda MacCracken. She's a senior principal at Accenture and an expert in marketing segmentation, strategy, and engagement. She's also an adjunct marketing professor at Harvard University and sits on the editorial advisory board for strategic healthcare marketing. And most importantly, as I understand it, she is a big Game of Thrones fan. Linda, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Carol. It's a joy to be here. And Game of Thrones has so many wonderful marketing lessons that we can learn a lot from that show, or even just from the familiarity of so many in the audience being aware of that show.
I just think that it's so great that I got to couple an introduction of a guest with Harvard University and Game of Thrones. I don't get to do that very often. So before we talk about marketing segmentation, and we're going to be, I think, discussing this from sort of a generational point of view. My first question of all my guests is, if you had to describe yourself as a tagline, what would it be?
Great question. You know, in considering that, I would say that my tagline is creating better healthcare experience where it matters most.
So talk a little bit about that, and from a work, it sounds like from a work perspective, what that means to you.
Well, I am passionate about healthcare being really responsive to the consumers, and am always amazed at my physician executive students at Harvard, my clients, or the discoveries we have together to find, reach, and engage customers and understand them better. And I think in healthcare marketing, the marketing leaders have the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, to find out the customer and what matters most. And being lifelong in healthcare marketing, from a chief marketing officer at 5 health systems to running a marketing intelligence business for IBM Watson, to working on finding, reaching, and engaging consumers and creating better experiences, I think that the opportunity in marketing is to really galvanize, or the most exciting part to me is how can we unlock the value and create better experiences where it matters most. And I think marketing people, and I'm sure, Carol, this is what your discoveries are because you get to spend time in this space, is understanding where things matter most.
Yeah, and that's so interesting as we sort of spend our time together here talking about marketing segmentation, and I think a lot of that obviously has to do with this consumerism of healthcare. You know, has really sort of shifted and changed, I think, marketing from your perspective, from the physician side, the provider side, quite a bit. So before we dive into that side of our conversation together, tell us about your background. You know, what is your path to healthcare? How did you get where you are today at Accenture?
Oh, well, thank you. You know, I was really lucky because back in school I studied political science and thought, what's the difference between a socialized business versus, you know, the free market business that we have here? My mother's Danish, so half my family's in Denmark, and I had the great pleasure of being able to go back. And the interesting conversations as I went through this political science, what's life like in Denmark compared to America, is although my entrepreneurial Danish relatives couldn't quite realize the profits, they were able to have a very different healthcare experience in socialized health. And so then I thought, all right, what if healthcare services in the minds of Americans was linked to what I need rather than the ability to pay? And I was very fortunate to, and my professors really helped shape me. You know, healthcare is pretty universal. If you want to look at socialization or socialized societies compared to free market, why not look at healthcare? So I was really lucky because one of my first jobs was working on a Medicare Advantage health plan where four clinics said, we want to know everything there is to know about seniors, because the better we can take care of them and the more we can recruit into our system, the better they'll be satisfied with better services. We'll be better able to have our clinicians understand seniors, because that's what we're going to specialize in, and we'll all have a win, and we can do more innovative things together. So we worked on a Medicare Advantage health plan, and the more we understood about what were seniors like, certainly we recognize there are different kinds of seniors. And when we realized, well, there are some that are leaving our network and they're going out of market. So what did we do? senior marketer, we did market research. And we would call them and say, you're going out of network. And they said, you know what, our children came home. And so we understand, but to make our children happy, we needed to go see the doctors they wanted us to see. Don't worry, we're coming back. And by the way, you don't have to pay. So getting consumer research about why people did things in the way that they did for managing their health care, how they worked with a system, and how they selected a system made that Medicare Advantage, which is one of the fastest growing businesses in the country, it made it a triple win. We had a capability and a service that was good for the patient, good for the provider, and good for the government. So it was a big triple win once we understood the needs and learned how to respond to them. And that's how it started in healthcare.
That's so interesting because that story sort of, in my mind, sort of predates this real emphasis right now on social determinants in healthcare, and a lot of that does impact seniors. And it seems like you were kind of talking about that social aspect of these patients long before it even became such a big topic right now in healthcare.
That is such a great point. I love that you're pulling back into that social determinants of care because you're talking of framing the entire, all the important factors that really make healthcare important. So I love that you're calling that out. When we were working on our early sales on Medicare Advantage, we were focused on where do seniors go to socialize. And with our clients, we encourage that. It's not a one-to-one. Sometimes it's a one-to-group. We found that Medicare Advantage or Medicare and health service discussions that happened in a group solved more problems and came up with more answers and helped people start to understand their needs. So going where seniors congregate and talking to them in groups about healthcare had this instantaneous capability of having people compare plans, compare experiences, express their needs. So it was really a terrific learning lab for making sure that our health system and our health plans were able to understand their needs. And of course, seniors are so interesting, right? Because if we use a framework financial services use of saying, well, seniors are as active as their health allows them to be. So they can be go-goes, slow-goes, or no-goes. So of course that's what I know. First of all, that rhymes, so that's pretty hilarious. But even so, if we think about it, right, people start managing some of their lifestyle choices. How much will they travel? Well, it depends on how active they are. How much help do they need? Well, it depends on how much they can do on their own or how much independence they want and what their health status is. So I guess I would say that the roots of social determinants of health have been in the Medicare programs for a really long time. But I am glad it's coming full circle, so we look at people whole against the sky, as they say in the poetry.
Yeah. And how did you get to Accenture? You mentioned some of the other companies you work for. How did you land there?
Oh, I feel so lucky to be at Accenture.
Great company.
So it's such a great company, and I feel like I've died and gone to heaven, and I'll tell you why. So I've worked in health. I know I've worked in health systems. I've been a consultant on my own with small boutique firms, and I've worked with what is now IBM Watson, a precursor, and really smart, fun people went to Accenture and said, oh, you should come here. It's the coolest place. So when your smart, fun friends back in you and say Accenture is great, then you say, why? Why is it great? And so I feel really lucky because I have this job, and I found many of the reasons that they love being here exactly right for me. I get to work with amazing health organizations, smart teams, wonderful insights, and having spent time at IBM, you can tell I'm a data geek, and knowledge and learning. We have cross-industry learnings to explore and design health their way. We're learning from the Disney Magic Band, the Carnival Cruise Medallion, about redesigning the healthcare experience. Isn't that exciting? I mean, like, okay, Disney team, how did you imagineer that? Right. Yeah. It's a complete game changer. So although I'm in healthcare, I'm learning constantly. Digital applications that we design and build for retail food providers is actually something that got a leadership team to say, can you do that for us? So I get to work with our population health, our digital innovation, and our customer teams to design, develop, and implement services in healthcare. There is enormous amounts of unlocking value in data and capabilities. So I've been here for 4 years, and I feel so lucky. It's like a constant learning lab, which is fun. there's celebrations, there's lots of smart people to learn from and with, and there's a lot of celebration around what kinds of value can we bring to our clients and enjoy their success. I do admire Accenture's leadership because the leadership always says, how can we help organizations pivot to the new? And as you know, life is changing so rapidly. Digital engagement, everyone's a digital consumer, and what can we learn from cross-industry practices? There's so many interesting capabilities, and so I'm excited to have been able to come and be able to be here.
I love that Disney story because obviously there's a lot of attention right now in healthcare, about the consumerism of healthcare and how patients, and certainly that generational thing that we're going to be talking about here shortly, how they want to engage with their providers. But like even Apple and Uber and other the retail giants coming into this space, I think is having a huge impact.
Oh, Carol, I think that's exactly right. And in fact, you're naming the greatest catalyst for change. And in fact, I was just with a team yesterday where when we were talking to the organization, we said consumer expectations are shifting. What Apple and Uber have done is now shifting to what people expect from healthcare. And the team didn't say, really, are they that digital? They said, you're right. How do we get there meaningfully, quickly? So we know that the Disney Magic Band was a 3 to 5 year journey, and and now of course it's a set course. But their cultural commitment to being Imagineering and imagining new experiences is part of what I think is so exciting about how we're shifting healthcare and how our very brave clients are reimagining the experiences they provide.
Yeah. Now I'm just curious: is this some of the things that you talk about as your role as an adjunct professor at Harvard?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I am so lucky. I teach in a program with physician executives, the Masters in Healthcare Management program, and it's for physician execs who actually work full time and come in on 3 weeks in the summer for 2 years, and then they come in on weekends, and they have a marketing class. And then when they come to me, they say, I'm in a room with marketing. Are they going to make me make a brochure? And we quickly shift the conversation. I said, listen, I've had a faculty appointment here since 2001. I'm lucky I have a multi-year faculty appointment. I promise you we are going for classic marketing. You own product. You own more product than the marketing people in your organization, so it's your job to help get it right. And we're immediately saying, so what's the experience? I'm excited and proud of my physician executives. We just finished a year with 8 teams delivering new innovations and marketing plans, and virtually all of them shift the consumer experience. They found pain points they said are not acceptable, and that was their marketing project. So at Harvard, we talk about the redesign of the experience or pain points or ways to reduce friction, and we move them into Imagineers. My first class is when they start designing new toothpaste products to increase sales and completely change how they present toothpaste for a variety of consumer segments. Right? Because if you think about it, parents have toothpaste needs for children that are very different. Young children will brush their teeth. My son actually picked up toothbrushing because Spider-Man wanted him to do it because somebody put Spider-Man on toothpaste. My daughter likes the princess, so she stood taller. She practices standing tall. So we have people who have sensitives, and so they brush their teeth for pain. So we have the sensitive segment. We have the young family. We have the socialite segment that likes that 24-hour breath control and wants it to look good in their designer bathrooms. So at Harvard, I have them redesign common products so that they understand how important it is to Imagineer a wholly new experience for their customer segment.
Oh, that's fascinating. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to What's My Tagline, and my guest today is Linda MacCracken of Accenture. I never thought I'd hear a Harvard professor teaching physicians about marketing using toothpaste. That is a great story. So for the benefit of our audience, because we're going to now, I think, sort of spend some time talking about marketing segmentation in healthcare. If you wouldn't mind, could you define for our audience what that means?
Sure, but let me even start with, to understand marketing segmentation, I think we start answering very baseline questions, who, what, and how. If anyone wants to say, so let's look at segments, because there's so many wonderful smart architecture programs, 56 segments, 66 segments. But if we can start saying who are we serving, what do they want, and how? And once we know that, we can say, here are the 2 or 3 people that we need. We need to have, in healthcare marketing, we need to have a description of customers that are different from each other so that we can create a truly personalized experience. My prior example of seniors who could be go-goes, slow-goes, or no-goes based on personal activity is one simple way of saying, hey, here's one way to break people down based on that capability. With other organizations, we've talked about, we know that household makeup is a huge predictor of healthcare utilization. Is someone alone, or are they partnered? Is there presence or absence of children in the household? Because that would actually generate the use of a lot of primary care. If we start looking at what cohorts are they in or what age groups, we've got the onset of age-related disease that is extremely different. People who are over 65, it's been a while since we published this in another research venue, but people who are over 65 has 3 times the rate of hospitalization as the baby boomers. So if we said, okay, so anybody over 65, 327 discharges per 1,000. If we look at the boomers, we're at 111 discharges per 1,000. And if we look at Gen Xers and millennials, we're at 85, 86. So you can see that I've just broken it into 4 generations, but with very different numbers that have very different impacts on healthcare inpatient hospitalization. Who, what, and how, I think, is the best foundation for saying what's a segment.
So I'm a marketing person, and so I obviously understand the value of my using different marketing messages to reach different audiences, because what's important perhaps to a 3-doc clinic is different than a large hospital and health system. So in the world of hospital and health systems, are some hospitals and health systems doing that, really pinpointing down and changing their messaging based on the different market segmentations, or is that everybody could be doing this better from a health system point of view or a hospital point of view?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I think that health systems and healthcare marketers really run the gamut. Sometimes it depends on what their organization is tasking them with. Some organizations say, please get the word out. Get the word out. And so their tasks and their responsibilities are, here's how many people we've been in front of. And that's 80% of the population that lives in our market. I think we're seeing a new wave of more precision-focused marketing that calls for a heavier investment in spend in terms of analytics that allows the segmentation and personalization so that we can make sure that we reach out to the people that we're trying to target. So if an organization is saying, hey, we really want to go after certain types of people who live in a particular market with a high likelihood of picking a healthcare provider on the internet because we're virtual health, or we want to make sure our online scheduling application works, then that allows that personalization to, again, in the marketing, it's not only the message, but we can do geo-targeting, and we really have to know to whom are we responding. As some of my favorite health system leads say, if you know who you're going after, you can deepen the message and triple the response. So that personalization and segmentation, I think, can really make or break the difference in some of the ROIs, depending on the appetite of the organization to say, yes, that's what we want.
And I know that you're really big on sort of the generational side of this, right?
I do, thank you. I do love the generational side, and I think the generational side is so helpful if we just say, hey, there's baby boomers and silent generation, and that's people from pretty much, the 50s up. But what's important about those 2 generations is they're digital immigrants. They didn't grow up speaking digital. But if we go to the Gen Xers, the millennials, and now the Gen Zs, which are now the largest segments or the largest generations, they're digital natives. They're used to a digital response. So the healthcare organizations and healthcare marketing has this terrific opportunity of saying, hey, the high volume population, Gen Z, millennials, Gen Xers, with over 150 million, compared to the baby boomers and silents, which are less than 100 million. So the older generations that are not as digital but are increasingly digital, and in fact the silents are the fastest growing digital natives, if we look at their habits, it's very different. The healthcare utilization is much higher, but we can't ignore the high volume of the Gen Zs, millennials, and Gen Xers who will actually adopt healthcare and digital solutions at such an alarmingly fast rate that healthcare has to repivot to integrate that digital. I do love the generations because it's easier to say I have a Gen Z and millennial. I have a Gen Z and millennial, and they've been hearing me talk about generations. And so when I say things like, "Why did you do that?" My Gen Z son will say, "Our people, that's what we do. This is part of how we're Gen Z." But I think many people can say the generation gap is alive and well. So if we have Arya as a Gen Z, Jon Snow as a millennial, Cersei as the Gen X, Ned Stark, Lydia Oleana, then we can start to realize that the different ages have different expectations and sometimes become surprised at each other. The more we can understand about each generation, how they perceive and how they're shaping healthcare, the more effective we can be at delivering a personalized, low-cost, and highly effective experience.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that back to the Game of Thrones characters, and I bet my audience is too. So I think that's interesting because I would imagine just from the work that you do with clients that perhaps the issue is how a Gen Z or a millennial, that marketing message is going to be completely, probably even diametrically opposed to the messaging to the silver generation, right? The people who are over 65 for sure, who are still perhaps uncomfortable with digital, uncomfortable with patient portals, uncomfortable with texting their doctor. They just, I think about my parents. They just want to have a conversation with a doctor. Can I not just talk to somebody on the phone or visit them and have a conversation? Right?
A real life phone with people talking to each other.
A landline.
I think you're exactly right. Oh my gosh, a landline. So our most recent consumer research shows some stark differences. So I'm so glad that you asked about that. The Gen Zs care mostly, 50% of them, they care mostly about my access. Next, they care about my cost. And last, they care about reputation. Now, if we move up to the silver generation, the first thing that they care about is the first thing they care about is what's the cost to me. Then it's the reputation. Last is access.
Right.
So if we are looking at an older retired population, maybe their access is less important. But even going into boomers, which are split across people who work and don't, they also, only 30% of them care about my access. 70% of their concerns are about what's my cost. And then comes the reputation. So we're really seeing it different and uniquely distributed about why did you pick your last clinician. If we go to the Gen Xer, the first priority is what's my cost, then what's my access, and then what's the reputation. So we're seeing just some very different ones, and access is now becoming a new priority for all the younger adults going up to the Gen Zs, as compared to access was not as important before. Getting the right doctor was important to the silver generation.
Right. And when you say access, even that means something different. Access to the silver generation means one thing, and to the Gen Z, it might be access via text, right?
Yeah.
When you say that, right?
Text,
yeah.
Digital, yeah. I know, I love what you're calling out. Digital scheduling, make it easy, make it on my time. Exactly right.
Right. That's fascinating. Linda, believe it or not, we only have a few minutes left of our conversation. I have to have you back because I think we have just touched upon the obviously not even the tip of the iceberg. It's the tip of the iceberg, and so I really would love to have you back on and continue this conversation. But before we wind down, tell me what's next. What's next for you at Accenture? What's next for you as far as the messaging that you're trying to get across related to how providers need to be marketing to the various generations?
Oh, well, first of all, I think that marketing, so thank you so much. This is really such an exciting conversation, Carol, and I love your materials, and I've had, enjoyed the chance to get to know you and your ongoing podcast of Advances in Information. I think that healthcare marketers are in the driver's seat and have this great opportunity to say, hey, listen, who, what, and how is a conversation we need to start together. I hope healthcare organizations will understand that marketing is a team sport, which is what I teach my physicians, and that they need to team up with their marketers who have the keys to the kingdom. My physicians come out going, I didn't know what marketing would be, but now I know that they have keys to the kingdom because this is how we understand our patients. I'm really excited because in my time at Accenture, what's next for me, I'm focused on optimizing a value-focused experience to reduce friction, eliminate waste, and have great health practice adoptions for people their way. I'm really lucky because I've got some terrific upcoming speaking opportunities with terrific people. I'll be at the Physician Marketing and Strategy Summit and the American Group Medical Association talking about consumer trends, the speed of digital adoption for different segments, and leading practices and tips about how providers can adapt.
That's great. I do love that keys to the kingdom idea that, as healthcare marketers, we can all visit Disneyland, right?
Yes, but marketers are the Imagineers that make it happen.
Yes, exactly.
So we're lucky.
Most important. Linda, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. This is really exciting, and thank you for giving voice to this very important topic.
You can connect with Linda MacCracken on LinkedIn, and of course, follow her on Twitter at @MacCracken. And be sure to follow Accenture on Twitter at Accenture Health. You can share your thoughts or comments on Twitter at #What'sMyTagline, or visit the program page on HealthcareNOW Radio.com. Have a topic related to our show you want to hear about, or are you an expert who'd like to be on the show? Reach out to me on Twitter at Carol Flagg, or email me at carol@HealthcareNOWRadio.com. Until next time, I'm Carol Flagg, and I want to know, what's your tagline?